She didn't even look at me when she said it. Just kept stirring her tea like it hadn't split me open. I wasn't supposed to be there that weekend. Mom's side had a funeral out of town. Dad was on some trip with his new wife, and the only reason I got dragged to that half-renovated lake house was to carry drywall and fix the back steps before the fall rain set in. What I didn't expect was her. Eva, my stepmom's sister. I'd never met her, or maybe once when I was 10, but I didn't remember. Now I'm 23, and she opened the door barefoot in a paint-splattered tank top and said, "Oh, you grew up." She smiled like it was a private joke. The place smelled like old wood and fresh varnish. Afternoon light slanted through the dust in the air. Her hair was tied up messily with a pencil. There was paint on her wrist, and something about her made the whole place feel smaller, like when someone walks into a room and it rearranges around them. She wasn't like the women I knew. There was nothing performative about her. She didn't try to hide the crow's feet by her eyes or the streak of gray in her braid. We didn't talk much that first hour. I worked on the back porch while she sanded window frames upstairs. We moved around each other, separate orbits, until the silence started to hum between us, thick and strange. When I came in for water, she was on the floor of the hallway, barefoot still, smoothing out a torn paper bag under a chair leg. "You hungry?" she asked, not looking up. "Starving. I've got canned soup and stale crackers. We could pretend it's rustic." I laughed harder than I should have. Maybe just because I liked her voice. Or maybe because it felt like a line from a dream. A woman I barely knew offering me soup in an old house filled with sawdust and sun. She sat across from me at the little kitchen table. Both of us a bit sweaty from the heat and work. Her shoulder brushed mine when she reached for the salt. Neither of us moved away. Then, while stirring her tea, she said it. Quiet, casually, like passing weather. "You look just like your dad did at that age." I looked up. Her eyes didn't meet mine, they were on the spoon, circling. I waited for her to explain. She didn't. There was something under the surface of her tone. Something that didn't belong in a kitchen at 2 in the afternoon. "How old were you when you met him?" I asked before I could stop myself. She looked up then. A long pause. Long enough I thought maybe she hadn't heard me. "I was your age," she said finally, but softer now. "We were different people back then." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was worse. It was knowing. And before I could think of something neutral to say, something normal, her hand moved slightly across the table. Just a few inches. Not reaching, not touching, just resting closer than it had been. And I felt my own fingers twitch. That's when the front door creaked open. We both turned, startled, but neither of us moved our hands. The door that creaked open was just the wind. She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath. I didn't realize I had too. "Old hinges," Eva murmured, brushing her palms down her jeans. "This place groans when it's lonely." I nodded, even though the room still felt full, crowded with something neither of us could name. She stood, slow and deliberate, like she didn't want to break whatever spell had settled. I watched her hands again. They moved with this unconscious grace, long fingers catching on the edge of the counter as she steadied herself. She hadn't looked at me since that line about my dad. I couldn't stop thinking about it. What she'd meant, what she hadn't said. I followed her outside with the toolbox even though she hadn't asked me to. She knelt beside the broken step, pulling up a splintered board, and I saw her wince. She'd scraped her knee earlier, and the bend of her leg stretched the bruise at the edge of it. "You all right?" I asked. She nodded, but her voice betrayed her. "Yeah, it just catches sometimes. Old injury." I didn't believe her. There was a thin thread of something in her, like she'd been shouldering too much for too long and was still trying to look effortless while doing it. I handed her the drill, but she didn't take it right away. Instead, her fingers grazed mine, then stilled. Not long, just enough. When she finally looked up, her eyes were quieter than her words. "My sister doesn't talk about you much," she said. almost apologetically. I didn't know what to expect. I hesitated. You mean me? Or who I look like? Her lips parted like she might say something, but closed again. And then she smiled in this small, apologetic way that made my chest tighten. I'm not great at this, she admitted. Talking, especially not with people who remind me of old things. She stood, brushing her palms against her thighs. That wasn't fair, was it? What I said earlier. About your dad. I don't know, I said. Depends what you meant. The air between us cooled. The lake breeze cut through the late afternoon, stirring her loose hair, brushing against the sweat still drying on my back. I hated how aware I was of her nearness, of how the scent of her sawdust, rosemary lotion, a faint trace of paint, clung to my clothes. She walked past me toward the porch, paused at the doorway and said without turning, "If you're not in a rush to leave, I could use another set of hands upstairs." Lights going fast. I should have said I had to be somewhere. I should have said anything to make the moment normal again. Instead, I followed. When we reached the top of the stairs, she turned to hand me a brush, and her fingers closed around my wrist, just slightly, just enough to stop me moving. Her voice was quieter now. "You really do look like him," she whispered. This time, she didn't let go right away. Her hand was still on my wrist. Not tight, just there. The brush she'd meant to pass me had dropped, forgotten, to the floor. We stood at the top of the stairs in the long hallway of the lake house, the walls stripped to bare wood, the windows open to the orange fall light bleeding through the trees. The air between us changed, not with words, with stillness, with the absence of everything else. She let go suddenly, like she'd realized too late how long she'd been holding on. "Sorry," she said quickly, brushing her fingers against her temple like she could shake the moment off. "It's just—" "What?" I asked too fast. Her eyes flicked up. She hesitated. "I think I've been alone up here too long. It messes with how you read things." There was something raw in her voice, like it had frayed in the back of her throat. Like being around me didn't let her stay guarded the way she wanted to be. I bent to pick up the brush, mostly just to break the eye contact. My hand was shaking a little. That was when her phone rang. She didn't move. "Do you need to get that?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "It's my sister," she said, quiet. I can tell by the ringtone. Neither of us moved toward it. The ringing kept going, tinny and echoing from the table downstairs. Then it stopped. I turned the brush over in my hand. "She know I'm here? I told her you were coming to fix the porch. But not that I stayed for soup?" She half laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, that would complicate things." I nodded, looked away. We worked in silence for a while, or tried to. I was supposed to be cutting tape for the trim. She was painting a window frame, but we kept brushing past each other. Too close, not quite touching. Every time we reached for something at the same moment, one of us hesitated, paused. When I finally stepped behind her to grab a drop cloth, my hand accidentally grazed her back, just above the waistband of her jeans. She froze. "So did I." I pulled away immediately. "Sorry." "It's okay," she said, but she didn't move. Not away. I should have left, right then. But instead I stood there, behind her, close enough to feel her breathing shift. "I don't know what this is," I said, under my breath. She turned then, slowly, eyes searching mine, and something in her expression made it impossible to finish that sentence. I looked away first, but she didn't. Then, from downstairs, came the sharp knock of a door. A real one this time. We both jumped slightly, like we'd been caught, even though nothing had happened. Yet, she stepped back, ran a hand down her neck, steadied herself. Her voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "Don't say anything. Just stay upstairs. For now." The knock downstairs came again, heavier this time. 3 deliberate raps, followed by silence. Eva didn't move. Neither did I. She stood near the window, half in shadow. Her hand clenched around the edge of the paint-stained table like she wasn't sure if it was holding her up or holding her back. And for the first time, I saw something in her I hadn't before. A kind of ache that had nothing to do with me. Like I'd stepped into a story that had started long before I showed up. "I've made mistakes," she said finally. "With people. With your dad. With myself." She laughed, bitter and breathy. "I always pick the wrong moments. The wrong men." I stepped forward before I could stop myself. "You didn't pick me." She looked up, and that stare, it burned. "You're not a mistake," she said. "That's the problem." The air crackled between us. I haven't felt anything like this in a long time, and it terrifies me, because I'm supposed to be the adult. I'm supposed to know better. I swallowed hard. "Maybe I want you to stop pretending to know better." Something snapped in her face then. Not anger. Not fear. Something softer. More dangerous. Vulnerability. She took one step closer. Slow, like she didn't trust the floor. "This can't happen. We both know that." I nodded. "Then why does it feel like it already did?" Another knock echoed from downstairs. Louder. Followed by her sister's voice. Muffled. "Eva? Are you home?" Eva's breath caught. Her eyes stayed on me. She reached out. Not to touch, not quite. But her fingers hovered just above my chest, like she wanted to place a thought there without saying it. "I can't ask you to stay," she said. "But I don't want you to leave." The words hit me harder than if she'd kissed me. Silence fell between us. But not an empty silence. The kind that lives and breathes, heavy with everything we weren't saying. And then, softly, almost like she wasn't sure it was allowed, "If I open that door, what happens after?" She wasn't talking about the front door anymore. And I didn't have an answer. Not yet. The door downstairs creaked open. Eva froze. We hadn't answered it. But her sister had a key. Footsteps, slow, cautious, echoed up from the foyer, mixed with the sound of boots on old wood and the slight shuffle of hesitation. "Eva," her sister called. "I brought the tiles from the garage. Thought you might need help this weekend." Eva turned to me like something had caved in her chest. "She wasn't supposed to come inside," she whispered. "She never just walks in." I stepped back from her instinctively, not out of guilt, but to shield her from whatever was about to unravel. Then, the sound of a bag hitting the hallway floor, keys clinking, a pause, and her sister's voice again, this time closer, sharper. "Is someone here?" Eva didn't move. She was still facing me, her face gone pale in the slant of the fading light. I started to speak, to say something, anything, when her sister's voice cut through again. "I saw your car and his. You didn't say he was still here." She stepped into view at the end of the hall. And just like that, the energy shifted. Her expression flickered when she saw us. Not scandal, something quieter. Calculation. Eva straightened. Her voice was steady, but her hands betrayed her. Knuckles white around the edge of the table again. "I asked him to help with the stairs," she said calmly. "He stayed for lunch. That's all." Her sister looked between us. Her gaze paused a beat too long on the space between our bodies, not touching, but too close. She smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "Funny. That's exactly what he said to me once." Eva blinked. "What?" Her sister tilted her head. "Your ex, his father. When we were 23. Silence dropped into the room like a trapdoor. I felt it before Eva spoke, something tearing loose inside her. "You and him?" she said, voice hollow. "You never told me that." "It was before you," her sister said casually, like she was talking about old weather. "It didn't mean anything. Or maybe it did. Hard to tell now, isn't it?" Eva stepped back, visibly reeling. Not from jealousy, not even betrayal. from the sudden, sick realization that the past had never really left. It had just been hiding in the walls of this house, waiting. She turned to me. "I didn't know," she said, her voice cracking for the first time. "I swear. I didn't know you." "You didn't do anything wrong," I said quickly. "Neither of us did." But something in her had folded in. Her sister crossed her arms, watching the two of us with unreadable eyes. Then, with a shrug, "I'll be downstairs. Let me know when the drama's over." She disappeared as quickly as she'd arrived. I looked back at Eva. Her eyes were glassy now, and her hand had moved to the wall, like she needed it to stay standing. She looked at me like she didn't know what to believe anymore. "Tell me," she whispered. "Was any of this real? Tell me," she whispered. "Was any of this real?" I didn't answer right away. Her voice was barely there, not angry, not accusing, just afraid. Like if I said the wrong thing, I'd ruin whatever had just barely existed between us. I stepped closer, slow, like I was approaching something wounded. "I don't know what this is," I said. "I don't have a word for it, but I didn't make it up." She nodded, barely. Her gaze dropped to the floor, like she couldn't look at me and hold herself together. "She always does this," Eva said after a moment. "Waits until I care about something, and then tears it apart. She doesn't even have to lie. Just reminds me who I used to be. You're not that person now." She looked up at that. "Aren't I?" Her voice cracked around the edges. "Maybe I still chase what I shouldn't want. Maybe I always have." There was so much in her eyes. Regret, shame, some old hurt that hadn't healed right. But there was something else too. Something alive. I stepped forward again, close enough to reach her hand. I didn't, not yet. "Do you want me to go?" I asked quietly. "Say the word, and I'll go." She didn't answer for a long time, just stood there, breathing unevenly. "I don't want this," she said. "But I do." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "So do I." Something shifted. Not all at once, but enough. Her shoulders relaxed a little. Her fingers flexed against the wall. She met my gaze. "This doesn't make sense." "No," I said. "It doesn't. And she'll never let it go. You know that." "I don't care." That made her laugh. Just a small, broken sound, like something let go inside her. "You're too young to say things like that and mean them." I shrugged. "Maybe. But I mean it anyway." Silence stretched between us again, the kind that had weight to it. The kind that waited for one of us to be brave enough to step into it. "I don't know what happens next," she said, softer now. "I don't have some plan." "I don't want a plan," I said. "I just want to be where you are." She looked at me for a long time, then finally reached out and took my hand. Her grip wasn't soft. It was firm, grounded, like she'd decided. Then footsteps on the stairs. She didn't let go. Her hand didn't leave mine, even as her sister's footsteps reached the top of the stairs. We both turned, calm but defiant. Two people who had decided, finally, not to flinch from what was real. Her sister stopped in the doorway. She looked at our joined hands, said nothing. Just watched, waiting for us to explain, to justify. But Eva didn't flinch. She didn't hide behind excuses or brush it off with a lie. She just said, "I'm not asking you to understand. I'm only asking you to let me make my own mistakes." That was the last conversation they had for a while. After she left, we didn't talk much either, not right away. The house felt different, quieter. But the silence wasn't dangerous anymore. It was honest. We cleaned up the tools, took down the drop cloths, made coffee. She changed into an old sweater and sat across from me at the table like it was any other Sunday morning. But everything had changed, and not in the dramatic, movie-ending kind of way. No declarations, no grand plans, just this quiet knowing between us that something had begun. Something small and fragile and undeniably real. I stayed that night, in the guest room with the door open, She didn't ask me to come to her, and I didn't try. We just existed in the same space, breathing the same air. But before she turned off the hallway light, she passed by the door and said, not looking in, just standing there, "I want to see who you really are, not just who you remind me of." That was the moment I knew this wasn't about my dad, or the past, or even the forbidden. It was about timing, wounds, longing, about two people who didn't fit the roles they were handed and stopped pretending they did. In the weeks after, it wasn't easy. Her sister stopped talking to her. My dad found out eventually, not through drama, just a quiet conversation that left both of us uncomfortable. But Eva didn't apologize for it. And neither did I. We didn't fall in love overnight. We didn't even call it that for a long time. It grew slow, awkward, flawed, with small pauses and uncertain mornings and gentle, hard-earned trust. But it grew. And now, when she brushes my hand in the kitchen, or rests her head against me while we're watching something dumb on TV, there's no shame anymore. Just two people who got it wrong before, and are trying to get it right now.